The Week with Ben Ellis.
This is Switch.
It's The Week with me, Ben Ellis, here on Switch Radio. It's time for a deep dive into the biggest stories across Birmingham and Solihull over the last 7 days. And joining us is one of our own on Switch Radio right now. It's our own Dean Kavanagh. Dean, hello.
How you doing, Ben? You right?
I'm good. Yeah, it's been quite the week, hasn't it?
It certainly has. There's quite a bit of news. So I've come armed with a cup of
a big mug there.
It's huge mug.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a very busy week.
Well, the biggest story going, and it's got a lot of attention on social media. It is, of course, it's my haircut, and because I'm now, because for those who can see this on YouTube right now with the Zoom background, I now look like how I used to look in the picture, which is, it was it got to the stage where we were talking sort of 70s footballer kind of look, and
I think your hair had. Choose a coronavirus analogy, it was almost shielding to some degree.
It was.
The rest of us came out of lockdown. Although actually, to be fair, I haven't cut my hair since pre-lockdown.
That's amazing.
I got it done about a week before we locked down, and it's held me through until now. Well, I say that. I mean, people may disagree, but
well, when I got my hair cut the other day, and I was like, yeah, this is all right. And I was scrolling back through my timeline of Facebook to a picture of when it was at least this length, and it was back in October 2019. So I can't honestly remember having my hair cut before then, up to the other time. But the interesting thing about getting the haircut was it was for the first time in my life, it wasn't done at a barber's, it was done at a hairdresser's. And that's a completely different experience altogether. So stuff that I wasn't really prepared for when I went in there. One, you've got to have an appointment. What's all that about? Two, they wash your hair for you.
Well, I'm not entirely sure I understand the difference between a hairdresser and a barber, actually.
Well, I'm outlining the differences right now. And the amazing thing, and I realised I've got my head tilted back in a basin, the nice lady's washing my hair. And I realised that apart from my parents and my grandmother, nobody else has ever washed my hair for me in my lifetime. So I'm like, what is going on here? And then obviously it gets on to chatting about family. Got any holidays booked? No, there's a pandemic. We were thinking about going somewhere, but we weren't. Vicky, her name was, so she's watching the video. I said I'd give her a shout out. She did a tremendous job. Urban Obsession is what it's called, free advertising. But there we go. They were very good. So yep, as my dad would say, my brackets now in order. And now we can press on with the stories of the last 7 days across Birmingham. And Monday and Friday, the sky turned a horrible shade of black because of two big fires that were spreading across Birmingham. Tyseley on Monday. Obviously, we all saw the smoke, but did you see the smoke?
Yeah, so I was... I'd gone shopping at the time. A unnamed supermarket had messed up our order where we order in advance. You book it online, you go and collect it. And a store which I will not name messed that up. So I ended up driving over to Coleshill to go and get some other bits and pieces from another unnamed supermarket. And as I was driving back, and I mean, the only reason I say this is because, how far away Coleshill is actually from certainly Tyseley at least. And as I was coming back, I saw in the distance. I say the distance. I mean, yes, I could see it was a distance, but I could also see it was a huge, huge fire. And I thought instantaneously that's something big. And then I got home, and actually Terry Ann off of Daytime was also nearby and put some pictures on our social media. And then actually, as the situation developed and you looked at some of the pictures. Of the fire afterwards, you realised actually it's quite a colossal incident they were dealing with.
Yeah, the important thing is that no casualties were reported.
Yeah, I mean, when you see videos like that, I mean, the first thing you think to yourself is, there's a real risk there. I hope everyone got out, and buildings of that size, and the other thing as well that you always sort of in the back of your mind about these kind of fires, particularly in industrial areas, is what is the place that's on fire? Is it chemicals? Is it something toxic? So there's a load of things I suppose that you have to also factor into it's not like there's a pile of wood on fire. There's an industrial building on fire that's got all sorts of stuff in it. So the fact that no one was seriously injured in that is phenomenal, actually.
Yeah. It's a plastics recycling firm.
I mean, I can't imagine that the smoke and the fumes that come off that are all that healthy, I wouldn't think.
No, I mean, the advice was to close your doors, close your windows. Temperature's about 35 degrees outside as well, which wasn't that straightforward for a lot of people on Monday. I live in Alton, a couple of miles down the road from Tyseley. I saw what I thought was a storm cloud building, because obviously it had been that warm. You usually get some thunderstorms during the evening. I said to my better half that we could have a cracking storm tonight. She went, "No, that's the fire." I said, "What fire?" And then she filled me in on it, and it's but then 4 days later, it happens again at.
I know.
The Cadbury Club. I've been to the Cadbury Club. It's a very, very nice establishment.
I mean, it's actually the last thing that anybody in the entertainment or the hospitality industry needs now.
Absolutely.
It's for stuff like that. I mean, again, the situation could have been a lot worse. But you do think to yourself, where you can't catch a break. I've never been there, actually. I don't think I've been there. I've driven past it a few times, but I don't think I've ever been in.
I've been to a quiz night there, and they put on a real spread of. It was like an assortment of Cadbury chocolates, the kinds you put into a box at Christmas, and it was very nice indeed.
They get those quite cheap, I'd imagine.
They would get those quite cheap, and we've been told that Cadbury's, thankfully for a lot of us here in Birmingham, have remained fully operational during the time. We can't be without our chocolate, particularly in Birmingham. That is indeed for sure. We're going to be talking with the area commander of the West Midlands Fire Service on the show at some point this afternoon to talk about how they tackled it, and just the idea of how we should stay safe in and around fires as well. There's some cracking stories this week, just when you look around it all, and we talked just about smoke and the air being toxic and people trying to make sure they stay safe. Well, if we're looking at cutting our carbon emissions down, then the electric car is the future. And nearly 400 new electric vehicle charging points will be rolled out across Birmingham over the next 2 years, it's been announced. It's an attempt to cut the carbon emissions across the city. 394 fast and rapid, that's a quote, fast and rapid charge points will be installed by 2022.
Well, I think there's no question that, electric cars are going to be a big part of the future. And it's also quite important, I suppose. This is not, I guess, necessarily directly related to it, but it's no secret that the West Midlands Combined Authority, and in particular Andy Street, has sort of hung a bit of a hat on the region in terms of, its capabilities around building electric cars. And of course, they applied for, or they put in the proposition for the mega battery factory. That's although that sounds like quite a catchy name. They weren't officially calling that. I think that's an accident. And it's an accident. I put those together. But they applied put in a proposition to build that factory for the mega battery. So there's no question that the West Midlands is, as an area, pinning itself on electric cars. And if you look at some of the other I think it just fits in with a lot of the other investments that certainly the council and the mayor have sort of pointed towards. So, we're only a few years on now from when we had the cycle path that runs through the city centre and out the other side to the university. So that was a big project, a huge project, actually. So I'm not all that surprised at this development. But I think actually it's a good one for the city. They will become cheaper. The problem at the moment, the electric cars are very expensive. If they were cheaper, then I suspect that they'd be flying off the shelves. Well, not now, but relatively speaking, they would fly off the shelves. But at the moment, they're just too unattainable, I think, for those of us on non-rockstar wages.
It's quite an image to see a car fly off a shelf. I'll be honest with you.
I was watching a program about Volkswagen, and they literally have cars on shelves in a rotating storage unit.
Wow.
So that's not such a crazy phrase as you might think.
It'd be like one of those lorries if the driver had to slam his brakes on, and then the car would go flying off the. But you know what I find interesting about this as well, from a political point of view, is so we've got these charge points coming up. The Labour side of the council, who of course lead Birmingham City Council, are very big on the clean air zone. The Conservatives on the council are very much opposed to the idea of the clean air zone because it's going to affect the economy and trade. And we've had the confirmation. We spoke about this on the show a few weeks ago, but the confirmation is coming this week that John Lewis in Grand Central will definitely not reopen. And they've cited, the Conservatives have said, look, John Lewis have decided to pack up and go now because of this clean air zone. So you've got a Conservative elected mayor who's firmly behind this, but the Conservative councillors, they might be behind the scheme, but there might be sort of an undercurrent there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to think the best of people, or think they have the best intentions. There is a possibility that a lot of this is just some political mileage for those who oppose the council. I mean, the one thing to remember is that the fact that there's a clean air zone being proposed at all is because central government has said that these major cities have to have some kind of proposition that resembles a clear air zone in place by a certain date. So, it is a Conservative government policy that essentially the Conservative councillors are opposed to. And I think they're opposed to that because there's potentially mileage in that. And again, that all fits in with, Andy Street and WC Man's sort of, bigger push towards being green. I think had there A, not have been for coronavirus, and B, actually there was some technology bedding in problems, which in fact is if I remember rightly, I mean, don't quote me on this, but is the only reason actually that it's not already in is because the technology that they were using to underpin it wasn't anywhere near ready. But I think you have to take a lot of this kind of shouting that you hear with a pinch of salt, because it's a Conservative policy from central government. It's supported by the Labour ruling council. It's supported by the Conservative mayor, and I don't want to say point scoring because that makes it sound like a game, but I think there is a little bit of that.
But you know what? But I think from our point of view here of strict neutrality, I think we can say that. I think we can analyse it as political point scoring. And
because I mean, it's a Conservative government central policy that these clean air zones come into place, and there's absolutely no question. And there was a story the other day actually on Switch website about the most polluted road in, I think, the West Midlands. Yeah. And it's in Birmingham city centre, and the levels there are outrageous of, the parts per million of the various toxic compounds that they measure it against. So something has to happen. And I mean, it's one of these things where, and I think as you get older, you begin to see that there is really, things aren't black and white. There's a lot of grey. And I can appreciate that, yes, it's important to not kind of, to sort of throttle incoming traffic so that you don't have as many people visiting the shops. So things like the Bull Ring, for instance, if you can't bring your car in, are you as likely to go? But at the same time, I understand that we have to do something. And I don't envy the people in the positions that have to make these decisions, but it's difficult, I think.
Another area for scrutiny over council decisions has been the U-turn, and it is a U-turn, and often when you say U-turn, it's in a kind of a disparaging way against those that are in charge. But the U-turn to say that the Athletes' Village for the Commonwealth Games will now not be in its intended place, which was a big story this week, and that's led to criticism of the Labour leader of the Birmingham City Council, Ian Ward, a Lib Dem councillor as well, suggested that he should consider his position over this.
Yeah, I think that's a bit much. I think that's probably maybe maybe a little bit too much. I mean, the thing is that, and this is not to say necessarily, just to kind of, be totally honest about my feelings. This isn't to say necessarily that the council would have delivered it properly anyway, or, there may not have been problems with it had they have actually got around to being able to do it. But I think you have to frame it in the current context of where we are. I mean, there are huge businesses that are looking to constrain their finances. There are, and if you have to think of the council, there's money coming in, money going out. They've got things to do, they've got things to pay for. I don't think you can pin this on him personally, and I think again, I'm not sure that's a particularly honest shot, if you like. And actually, to be honest, I mean, the facilities that they will have. So I work at the university, so I drive past the intended location for some of the athletes every day, and they're really nice facilities. So it's not as if they won't have great places to stay while the games are on. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not like we're going to get like do your part for the do your bit for the games and just put the athletes up in your gaff.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to roll up. We're not going to go to the camping store and buy 200 tents and stick them in a big piece of grass. I mean, so I think it's quite harsh to try and pin this on the council. I mean, yes, don't get me wrong, and again, in the spirit of openness, the council doesn't have great form in, some of its organisational deliverance. So, the bins, the refuse palaver, if you like, more than anything else, has been going on for years. There's questions about council waste in terms of financial spending, but to put this on them now in the context of where we are, I think is probably a little bit too much.
Moving on, do you think we are starting from a local point of view to be putting that we're living in a kind of a nanny state in the stuff that we're told from the authorities? The story of giving us advice on how to make sure our bins are closed during hot weather to avoid making sure that flies aren't attracted to our waste. I think, yes, I know. I'll cover the bin up, thanks.
That's what it has a lid for, right?
That's what it's a lid for, yeah.
I mean, yeah, a lot of the time, actually, what you tend to find from these things is that there'll be a council meeting or something, and, the councillor, the health advisors for the council will say something like, well, people should do things like cover their bins, and it will only be a minor point of conversation in this meeting. But somebody will pull it out as an individual line and sort of, it'll be council advice, close your bin, and everyone thinks, but actually in reality it was just a sort of,
Yeah, I've got the quote. I've got the quote here. Solihull bins, quote, should be wheeled out of the sun and kept shut tight, end quote, in order to avoid a stink during this week's heat wave.
I can tell you for a fact that our bin did not move an inch in the heat wave. However, it was supplied by Solihull Council with a lid, so we used said lid to close it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think many people actually. I don't think many people sit with their bins with the lid off anyway. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think maybe I should go to the council because mine's done by Solihull as well and just say, look, my front is always permanently in sunlight. There's no shade. There's no shade developed from the house given where the sun is. So the wheelie bin the wheelie bin will always be in the sunlight. So if there's a stink, it ain't my fault, pal. Is the way.
I think I get the feeling though. There is a sort of feeling that perhaps things are being micromanaged and people feel a little bit sort of we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to do this, we have to do that. But it's all advice. If you don't close your bin, it'll smell a bit funny, but really nothing will happen by that. So
yeah, now that we're coming out of lockdown, the measures seem to be being eased a lot of the time. We talked about a little bit earlier on about the effect on the Cadbury Club because of the fire and getting back into the entertainment, hospitality industry and all that. Well, some people have had the novel idea of getting themselves pavement licenses to to try and make social distancing more possible, to remain open. 2 town centre pubs have become the first in Solihull to submit plans for new outdoor seating areas. Cafes, bars and restaurants can also apply for the pavement licences, which are designed to boost the businesses following lengthy closure. I think fair play to them is what I say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of local pubs that I've seen that have done something similar. Although when I say pavement, they actually, they have a car park, so they're putting tables in the car park to try and increase their capacity a little bit. I mean, so my wife actually works in the hospitality sector, so it's really important for, and as I was reading the other day, employees over some huge number, I think it's 2 million or something people are employed in some way related to the hospitality sector. So really these kind of schemes that can help to keep those businesses going, but while at the same time ensuring that we can keep that replication rate down, are great things. I mean, it's sort of, I'm not necessarily sure that is it Hurst Street? Are they on Hurst Street, the pubs by the
yes.
Solihull, isn't it? Sorry, no, Solihull.
These licenses are in Solihull, but yeah.
Sorry. So I'm not entirely sure that it's going to look like Paris or some Italian cobbled street, but it will help the businesses survive, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, the weather. We talk about the weather a lot. It got very hot during this week, after quite frankly a ridiculous summer. But I think we were owed a few nice days.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely out of this world. I mean, I saw something on Facebook actually, which I think really does actually sum it up really well. So, if you go to Spain and it's 35 degrees, then it's nice, it's warm, it's good. If you go to Italy and it's 35 degrees, it's nice and it's brilliant and it's warm and it's lovely. When it's 35 degrees here, you almost want to rip off your skin and put it in the fridge. I don't know what it is. I mean, it is partially supposed to humidity, because it then immediately rains straight afterwards and it becomes unbelievably uncomfortable. But I mean, I was struggling to manage. I hate the sun. I cannot stand it. So I do whatever I can to get out of it. And I was upstairs, windows open and all sorts. I couldn't deal with it. It was outrageous.
Yeah, a lot of stories that we've covered on this show in the last few months do seem to do the rounds and come around again. A few weeks ago, we spoke with the Labour MP for Erdington, Jack Dromey, about the illegal raves that were happening in Sorrel Park in Erdington, and it's been happening again.
Yeah, and again, this is another one where I think I understand the difficulties the police have when they turn up to a site and find hundreds of people there, and having the capabilities and the manpower and the capacity to deal with that. But I did read, I read that actually the police are managing to deal with these incidents now much better than they were, at least. So they are beginning to clear people away. I mean, the problem actually, the wider problem is that if you look at coronavirus advice and people that are adhering to the guidelines, it's young people actually that are the larger spreaders at the moment, those who are perhaps not quite, and this is nothing against anybody I know, but, you scroll down Facebook and you see friends meeting in a pub and they're all sort of, hugging and this, that, and the other. And you don't live together. And I know you don't live together. And there's a lot of that kind of, it's become a little bit sort of, well, but we're not there yet. And if you look at some of the recent cases, they are beginning to tick up. And the problem is that once it gets to a point where you can't get a handle on it, that's when we're back to, really worrying about whether we can deal with it in hospitals.
New coronavirus infections have more than doubled in a week in Birmingham, is what we're hearing. We've had the Director of Public Health, Dr. Justin Varney, on the show a couple of times. If this continues to go, we'll get him on again, because he was trying to I'll be honest, I was pressing him to, because there are places that are close to Birmingham which are on the watch list for the government. We've seen Sandwell, for instance. There was a pub in Smethwick which held a barbecue this week where there were 70 people there, where there's like a mini outbreak, so people are having to watch themselves. I think you're right.
Well,
I think
there was a case actually. There was a case yesterday in Erdington, in a pub in Erdington.
There was, yeah.
So it's really starting to get quite close now.
Yeah. So if we will get him back on the show if.
Yeah, I think the problem is that it's very easy to say, and there's X cases now. That's not very many, and a lot of people are saying things along the lines of, well, only 10 people died of coronavirus on last day, and there are a couple of things on that people are sort of just kind of not quite paying attention to. One is that, well, firstly, those 10 people have families, so it may not be a big number to you, but if it was your nan or your mom, you'd be devastated. And the second thing is that cases, so people who die of COVID, that number will always lag behind cases. So there's a real risk that if we look at deaths now and say, well, not many people are dying of it anymore, and then we allow cases to go up by, not adhering to rules or being a bit lax about this, that, and the other, then actually, in a couple of weeks' time, we could be in a bit of a pickle.
What have you made of these so-called freedom gatherings that have happened? There's one in Birmingham City Centre. Yeah. Anti-mask protesters. Who,
I don't. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, right? And everyone is entitled to not wear a mask where it is legal for them to do so. But at the moment, it is not legal for them to not wear it in a shop or in an enclosed space. And I'm not entirely convinced. I don't understand. What I can't get into my head is what people think what is the big scheme behind masks if not for the protection of public health?
Well, this anti-mask group also questions the need for 5G. Which is a story that there's a mast in Solihull, a story which we covered on the show last week.
I have some really bad news for them about their wireless routers then if they have Wi-Fi at home. Exactly.
Yeah, I remember, and I like to plug other shows on this radio station. And this is going back years ago. We were doing a chat show with DJ K of the Dance Music Connection. Did similar thing like this, talking about the week's news. I think the show used to be called The Forum. I don't know if you
remember that.
And we were talking about energy saving and climate change and carbon footprints and all that. And he just said, I think we should just go back to how it always used to be, oil lit lamps and candles. And so I said, yeah, Kenny, you're a DJ. That's what you do. How is that going to be possible for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure you can get many vinyls, many players that are powered by petrol.
No. Bless him.
Yeah, love him. I think sometimes it's very easy to be. It's much easier to be angry than it is to kind of, certainly it's much quicker to get into a position of being angry than it is to actually think things through a little bit more in detail. I like I said, I don't quite understand what people think the end game is for masks, if not for public health. Me wearing a piece of fabric over my face is not in any way going to, it's not. I don't understand what the objection to it is. It's uncomfortable. Yes, it's uncomfortable. No question about it. Particularly if you wear glasses, it's uncomfortable. But it's not. Is it that big a deal, really? I'm not convinced it is. It's not enough to be starting, kicking up big stinks about it.
Yeah.
Personally, anyway. Like I say, everyone's entitled to do what they want, where it's legal for them to do so. But there are very, very clear situations now where, and actually the other thing as well is that businesses are absolutely entitled to ask you to do what they think, well, not what they think, what they want you to do. If a business says to you, well, you can only come in if you have a mask, and we can only have X number of people in the store, then that's their business's call. It's they can do what they want.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed this. I really have over the last however long it's been, and of course we will do it again. When can we next hear Dean Kavanagh on Switch Radio? What have they got you doing?
Well, so Stephen M. Higgs off of 107 Point Drive, although he doesn't own up to this, is actually a head honcho here.
Is he really?
He will Why he's one of the honchos. He's a honcho of some degree, maybe not head honcho, but yeah. So whenever I'm kind of at his whim. So he tells me when to cover someone, and then they airlift me in. Well, maybe not airlift, we're at the bottom of a block of flats, but I walk in through the front door and cover. So I don't know is the answer to that. But I would suspect you'll hear me at some point next week.
I did a week for him a couple of weeks ago.
He's a bit of a smooth manoeuvre, actually. He manages to get people to...
Just a bit, yeah. But what I realised at the end of I was knackered by the end of Friday. I used to do this in my sleep. It was no problem. Now I've got one show a week. And
it is hard work.
Where's my stamina gone?
Well, the first time that I covered one for him during the mornings. I did a morning shift, 10 till 1. And it's the first time that I did it in the studio, I did it live. And it's the first time I've been in the studio for quite a while. And my button pressing was all over the show. All sorts of bizarre things went on for that first 30 minutes.
Yeah, we should put out that this is there's a jargon alert here for those who may not know. We have our own language when we talk in the radio business.
Button pressing.
Wild button pressing. There's actually profanity for that kind of thing, which we can't actually. But we know what we're talking about. But but there we go, Dean. It's been an absolute pleasure, and appreciate you coming on. And we will do it again.
Cheers, Ben. See you later.
Well, great videos from the week. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. It's down here somewhere. And don't forget, you can catch us on the radio every Sunday between 12 and 2 on FM across Birmingham, 107.5, on mobile, on DAB and online. We're made for Birmingham. This is Switch Radio.